Gregory Oliveri. I have noticed that there are a number of people who identify themselves as independent Scientologists, as if there is in fact something immutably valid to salvage of the system outside of the Church of Scientology. I'm curious to know what this means if, as we now know, the whole system was based on the derivative musings of a narcissistic madman, now perpetuated by a dangerous sociopath. Is it simply the belief in the therapeutic practice of auditing and an intermediate point of transitioning away from the system? Mr. Spock, what do you think of people like Mark Rathbun who still believe and practice Scientology and people like that? Thank you for your work. Carry on. Well, independent Scientologists are people who practice the techniques and methods of Scientology outside of the official sanction of the Church of Scientology, which is a corporate entity that holds the trademarks and service marks of Dianetics and Scientology, and so they have legal right to have the only legal right to be, selling those services under those names. That's what I understand that to mean. So when you have independent Scientologists, they're out doing the procedures and whatnot, but they don't have the blessing of David Miscavige, L. Ron Hubbard, or the Church. And in fact, Hubbard was real, death on these kind of people. He always referred to them as squirrels. He used the term squirrels because he talked about the idea of these nutty people, out looking for nuts, running in a wheel all the time, like a hamster wheel, and just spinning their wheels, not getting anywhere, right? That was his derisive sort of attitude about people who weren't getting him money for his, deceptive practices. And anyway, so that was that. That's where that sort of comes from. As far as my take on it goes, I think that it's a phase of the recovery of coming out of the cult of Scientology, that you still hold on to certain of the beliefs and cling to the idea that there's some value to the unique methods and techniques of Scientology as a therapy. And, for a certain percentage of people, there is a limited workability in what Hubbard derived from other sources. And, Dianetics, as I've said, is I kind of call it a regression therapy. You go back and remember things that happened to you in the past. And I think that has some therapeutic value for some people. And there are some Scientology techniques that people just swear by, And I think there's some placebo effect there going on. And I think that there is, to be slightly judgmental, I think that there is an unwillingness to have considered that that they could have been conned for that long, that they have to hold on to some part of it or some aspect of it and be right about the fact that, that something they did couldn't be wholly wrong, I think there's a certain degree of that going on with independent Scientologists as well. And otherwise, other than that, I think that it's just a phase that people go through in coming out of Scientology that hopefully they'll be able to move on from, because as I understand it, most people who come out of Scientology come out, with the idea that the organization is bad or Miscavige is bad or, they're doing things that aren't okay because they're going against the writings of Hubbard. And it's, it's a phase because you come out and then you start researching it and you find out that Hubbard was just as bad and was just as nuts. And then you start kind of you start questioning everything. And I think some independent Scientologists are not willing to let themselves go there and are not willing to acknowledge the really gross and glaring outnesses, the things that Hubbard was up to, the lies he was telling. They're not willing to take that extra step and go, okay, well, this whole thing is just a con. It's just the whole thing is just a disaster. And really was unfortunate that I was ever part of any of it, and I should just walk away and sort of flush it out of my system and move on. So, I don't hold it against anyone that they do that at all. I got nothing on that. People can do whatever they want to with their lives. At least the thing that can be said about independent Scientologists is at least they're not Sea Org members, they're not engaging in human trafficking, they're not engaging in active, knowing deceit of their fellow man. I think there's a certain degree of deceit going on when they're charging for, Scientology services and whatnot. But, that's between them and their customers, buyer beware, and that sort of thing. So I think I don't look at independent Scientologists as evil people or carrying on in the tradition of Hubbard or something like that. I don't have that view of them. So I think that's about the best explanation I can give of that whole thing.